In this week's podcast, we take a look at the memorial event which took place online this weekend for the Apollo 15 Command Module pilot, Al Warden.
And following the release of the new documentary about Challenger on Netflix, we discuss our favorite space documentaries.
Thanks to everyone who subscribed or left a review on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to come and find us on social media at Space and Things 1 on Twitter and at Space and Things Podcast on Facebook and Instagram.
And enjoy episode 4 of the Space and Things podcast.
You're listening to the Space and Things podcast with Emily Carney and Dave Giles.
Hello, I'm Emily Carney.
And I'm Dave Giles. Welcome to episode 4 of our podcast. It feels like ages ago since we recorded the last one, Emily. How have you been?
I'm doing great. I took a big jump yesterday and I booked a trip. I know during a pandemic, I'm probably going to get dragged for doing it by listeners, but I actually booked a space trip.
Oh,
the first one I've done for a long time, so I think you know a little bit about it. But,
I do, yeah. You messaged me, and I'm quite excited about it. I do love the way you just said, I booked a space trip, as if you've booked a flight on one of Elon's next Starlink flights.
Yeah, I wish. No, I'm actually, I had some Delta airline credit, and I was like, man, I've wanted to go to Huntsville for years, but it's just either I couldn't afford to go at the time or just never, it was just not the right time,
Yeah.
And so finally I was like, shoot, I'm just going to do it. So last night I talked to my husband and he's not controlling. I don't want people to think, oh, she had to ask permission. No, but I kind of like to let him know, I'm going to be gone for a few days in November. And I'm like, man, I really would like to go to Huntsville. And he's like, why don't you go, man? It's your credit. So I'm like, okay. So I booked a trip and I'm going from November 6th to the 8th. So definitely while I'm there, I'm probably going to record some content for Space and Things.
Cool.
And of course, it'll be protected. The Space and Rocket Center, I believe, is open Tuesday through Sunday, and Monday it's closed for sterilization and cleaning. So everything seems pretty safe, and of course, I'm going to be protected and all that. So I'm really looking forward to it. I've never been there, and I know it's kind of weird circumstances to go, but I'm still really excited, so it should be really cool.
I was there this time last year. It's one of the great places to go. I'm excited to hear what you think of it all. So yeah, we'll save those conversations for another time. I think in November when you're there or after you get back, I'm sure we'll have a wonderful catch up about that place. But between now and then, if anyone has been to the Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama, please let us know what you think and what Emily shouldn't miss out on while she's there. I think that's important. That we try and get some tips from those who have been there.
Well, how are you doing? I hate to be like, yeah, I'm going on this trip. And, so how are you?
Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm fine. Plodding along here. I've been watching a lot of documentaries this week. That's about all I've been doing. But more on that
awesome.
later.
More on that later. Yeah, same here.
Excellent.
Same here.
Charlie, it might sound corny, but the view is really out of this world. Right. We had a couple of comments in the back row that I won't repeat.
So a few bits of news before we get started. This one's interesting. Some scientists at Cornell University, I think it's at Cornell University, have discovered the first exoplanet outside of the Milky Way. While it was always assumed that planets probably did exist in other galaxies, we've never had evidence of it until now. So it's pretty crazy. It's apparently the size of Saturn and is about 28 million light years away, which is, I suppose, just down the road.
Yeah, just a little jump.
Yeah, just down there. They found it using X-rays, which I think again, I just think is delightful. And there's been a press conference at NASA this week, trying to get the momentum going for the Artemis Program. We've spoken about that quite a bit already, but they've promised some new information. But to me, it seemed mostly what we already knew. Again, they're aiming to have the first crewed flight of the Orion capsule on top of the SLS, the Space Launch System, in 2023, with plans to land on the moon in 2024 and stay there for a week. They're also saying that the first modules of Gateway, which is the new lunar space station, will be launched in 2023 as well. So it could be an exciting year, although personally I'm a little bit dubious about the timeline. What do you think about all of this, Emily?
As far as the timeline is concerned, what you just said, I do feel the same way. When you think of 2023, that's really not very far from now. Wasn't really that long ago. They're like, oh yeah, SLS will be flying by 2018.
Yeah.
I know it's not the same NASA as it was then, but we know how much shuttle got delayed.
Yeah.
I mean, it took like 12 years for the shuttle to, from, okay, we're thinking about, we're going to enter into this, and then 12 years later it flew. So, and with SLS and, Orion and Artemis and stuff, well, Artemis is a relatively new name, but the idea of SLS and Orion has been around for almost a decade, over a decade probably. So, I don't know. I'm skeptical. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it kind of thing. I think there was sort of an idea put about, I don't know, I forgot who put it out, but I think this was like a while ago. But somebody was talking, I think at NASA, about, there might be a possibility they would put Orion on the Falcon Heavy, maybe.
Yeah.
That's kind of a neat idea. I don't know if NASA is averse to that or not, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know really what the readiness of SLS is. I know they just did that booster test out in, I think it was in Utah, if I'm correct. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm personally very skeptical, and I hate saying that. There's nothing I would love more than in 2023 and 24 us to be sitting here, or not even sitting here, hopefully in Cape Canaveral or at
oh my
KSC.
God, could you imagine?
There's nothing I would love more for us to both be there, like reporting from, okay, they're going to land on the moon. That would be awesome.
Incredible.
So I hope that happens. I really do. That would be really cool. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I'm still kind of like, I'll believe it when the press, release goes out, like, okay, you can apply to go there and see the launch and see the landing. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I wonder whether this is a reaction to what Charles Bolden said last week, what we talked about last week, whether NASA had to come out and just say, we're still pressing ahead with SLS, because I think there are rumors that they'll use Falcon Heavy instead to meet the 2024 deadline. But I think NASA are desperate to try and say, no, we're sticking to our way, and probably felt they needed to respond. So they've kind of done it using this press conference. But as I said, there's no real new info. I didn't see any new information within what they've said. So it's just that they're just making sure that we know, we're still planning on doing this. We're still planning on doing this. And that's cool. But yeah, as you say, I just can't see it happening. The one bit of new information I have learned this week, but not from this press conference, is that the plan with Artemis is, in order for them to not lose communication at any point, rather than go round the back of the moon, they're gonna insert themselves into a north-south orbit of the moon.
Oh, okay, that's really cool, like a polar type orbit.
Yeah, a polar orbit. So they'll never lose comms with Earth, which I think is pretty cool.
That is
just because that's like a notable difference from the Apollo program, and also like. It's impossible to compare this to the Apollo program on so many levels, but the Apollo program run to schedule on the whole because they spent so much money on it, and that's just not happening on this. It's not the level of budget doesn't exist for NASA at the moment to be able to reach these deadlines. I don't believe.
Yeah, not even close.
Yeah, so I really do think if they're going to do the 2024 thing, which still would be amazing, I think it's more likely to be via a commercial partner.
I agree.
Which wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be averse to that. I think that would still be fine. But
how cool would it be to have people walking on the moon? I mean,
in our lifetimes.
I know.
In our lifetimes. Because I've always felt like, watching these we're going to talk about them later in this show. I've always felt like watching TV and documentaries. I'm like, man, if I could have just seen one Saturn V launch, just one, that would have been awesome, So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm hoping in 4 years we'll both be at Kennedy Space Center doing a Space and Things from the launch site. So we'll see. or from the landing.
Or maybe interviewing someone on the moon via Zoom.
Yes.
Or, how amazing could that be?
That would be awesome. Yeah, you can always. I can always dream. I still dream of stuff like that. So I think that would be awesome. I don't think anything's really impossible. So.
Yeah. So that's what we've had this week.
Hello, Houston. The Endeavour is on station with cargo, and what a fantastic sight.
Beautiful news. Romantic, isn't it?
Oh, this is really profound. I'll tell you, it's fantastic.
On Saturday morning, Common Worldwide Inc. hosted an online event to celebrate the life of astronaut Al Worden. As many of us know, Al Worden was the command module pilot for Apollo 15. And about 10 years ago, he released a book published by the Smithsonian called Falling to Earth. It was written, co-authored with Francis French, which everybody has to read it. You got to go out there and get it. If you haven't read it yet, you got to get it now. Did you watch the service?
I did, yeah. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. So Common Worldwide Inc., Al had his scholarship and still will have his scholarship fund for Space Camp, for international students for Space Camp through them. And he did quite a lot of work with them over the last few years, if I'm correct, along with Charlie Duke and Walt Cunningham. So that's why they were hosting that event. And essentially it was a load of people had sent in videos, messages about Al, who unfortunately died in March, right at the start of all the COVID craziness. And I'm glad they've done this, because he died at a time when it was clouded in other news stories, and he didn't get his chance in the light that he should have got, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree.
So this, to me, it was a wonderful event. It seems to me, I don't know, Emily, but it seems to me, I never met him, but from all the little videos and all the little messages beforehand, he seemed like the real deal. I mean, I glorify all these guys as being heroes of mine and stuff like that. But you've spoken about how other astronauts are really nice and affable. Is that the word I'm looking for? They're friendly. They're lovely. But Al seemed, from all these comments, he seemed to be like one step above everyone else on that front.
I was really blessed to be friends with Al in the last decade of his life. And you are absolutely correct. If you had met him, you would have not been disappointed. He was as awesome as everybody said he was. He was very friendly. If you had, a question for him or something, I'm sure he's heard the same questions a million times, but he would answer it. He was actually he was very helpful for me just in research about, Apollo and the shuttle, because I'm not from the Apollo era. In my mind, I tend to compare everything with, kind of Apollo versus shuttle, because I grew up during the shuttle era and I'm used to that. So I would frequently ask him, questions about the Saturn V and, okay, are the abort modes on the Saturn V survivable? Stuff like that. And he would be like, oh, yeah, that he would answer the questions, and stuff like that. He was also a lot of fun. He was extremely funny, had a great sense of humor. If he really liked you, he would kind of poke at you a bit, not in a bad way, but not to be mean, but he would kind of just mess with you. He was an amazing person, and he's terribly missed in my life. I don't think it still really hit me that he's gone, honestly, because he was such a living person. I mean, I know everyone's like, well, he was 88. And I'm like, yeah, but if you met him, he wasn't 88.
Well, you look at all the video clips, and some of which were from only last year. He doesn't look 88 at all. At all.
No.
He looked a lot younger, which is quite, there are 88-year-olds who look 88. They look 120, but he definitely doesn't. He looked young and energetic, and he had a thirst for life in everything you see, all the clips you see. Again, I didn't know him personally, but certainly in what I've seen.
He was. He truly, like you said, he may have been in his 80s, but up until the last few months of his life, he was very active. He was very vibrant. He was really hip. He understood memes and stuff. He got the humor. He wasn't, some people you show memes, you're like, I don't get that. He would get it. Yeah, he would be like, oh, that's funny. And I'm like, how can you get this? You're in your 80s, you know, but he did. Had a really pretty sophisticated sense of humor. He was one of those people, he would talk to anybody. He didn't really have like a hierarchy thing with people. Like, you know, some astronauts, they'll only really talk to the people who are paying them, you know? And he was not like that. He would talk to anybody. So he was very open and friendly. Mm-hmm. I do have a few funny stories about him. I'll tell one.
Yeah, that would be great.
I'll tell one story. This is actually from one of the last times I saw him. This was, and I wrote about it in a blog I did for the National Space Society around the time he passed in March. Okay, last year, I was at the ASF, the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation. They had an Apollo 11 event, and it was held during a weekend, and there was like a pub crawl, there was a concert, there was by I think Edison's Children, which is Rick Armstrong's band, and I think the Alan Parsons Project, and there was some other stuff too. There were panels, and we basically just hung out that whole weekend, but he was there. We're at the hotel waiting for the bus to take us to the concert that night. And so we're in kind of the lobby just waiting, blah, 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 blah. And I'm standing next to an astronaut child, like an adult child of an astronaut. I'm not going to say who it was because she seemed like a very nice person, but very just media shy, which I understand.
Yeah.
She probably is not into talking to journalists at all. So I'm standing next to her. We were just chit-chatting, just like, whatever. And Al comes up, and Al did not have an inside voice. He would just say whatever he thought, and it would be loud as possible. He comes up and he says, hey, that's my friend. You better not mess with her because she'll write a bunch of bad things about you. She's a journalist. And I wanted to die. So he says this, and the astronaut child was like, I could see her like skittering away from me like, a cockroach on a light switch. Like, she's like, see ya. Like, and I'm like, no, I'm not covering this event. I'm just here to have fun. I'm not writing about this. And I didn't. I'm like, oh, it's all good. And he saw me like squirming because I swear to God, I can see him like out of the corner of my eye to right now. And he had his arms folded over his Hawaiian shirt and his eyes are burning on me. And I could see him staring at me like, how's she going to get out of this one? So I'm like, oh, it's, so I'm trying to get out of this. Like, oh, I'm here just to watch the show. I'm just, I'm not going to write about anything. And then he says, remember, she's a journalist. And I was like, oh my God. So I just quit. I was like, whatever. So finally I just got in the bus and I just quit. And I think, on a happier note, I think I did mend my relationship later that night with the astronaut child. So, because we started talking again, and this person's actually really cool. Yeah, so that's one Al Warden story. If he liked you, he would mess with you.
Oh, I like that. My kind of guy.
The best thing, though, was I could feel his eyes on me, like, how you going to get your way out of this one, Carney? And I was like, oh my God, no. So that was pretty funny. And I have other stories. Oh my God. I don't know if this one I should tell. I have a signed bedpost from him.
I don't want to know. I think that's got to be it. I think let's just leave it at that.
Just leave it at that. Yeah. Long story. I received a signed bedpost from him.
Amazing. So, that's wonderful. I don't want to know that story. Well, I do, but I think it's better to not know it.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So
I will leave a link to your the article that you wrote after he died within the description of the podcast. It's important. A lot of people might not know who Al Warden is. Obviously, he was the command module pilot for Apollo 15, and he's still a record holder because he was the very first person to do a deep space EVA or spacewalk. He was the first person to do one out, not walking on the moon, but actually out in space, flying around. And there's only one photo of it, and it's like of his ass.
Yep. It's of his butt. Yeah, I went to a talk he did once, and he was like, "Yeah, Irwin comes out, gets one shot, and then the camera jams." And he's like, "I'm not a conspiracy type person, but And then he's like, "So yeah, they got the one shot of my ass, And I was like, "Oh my God." It's so funny. And of course, the picture comes up on the screen, and it's just that one picture.
The event was wonderful. I will also post the YouTube link to for anyone who might want to go back and watch that, because it's great to see. There's people you'll know, there's people you don't know, but people from all around the world, and his family are involved, and I just found it wonderfully moving. Also, didn't know he was a Beatles fan, and for me that was a real moment. And the way it ended on Mother Nature's Son, which is such a beautiful song. I will never listen to that song the same.
It's funny that you said that, because I swear, I'm not making this up. Like, I swear to you, about probably 2 years ago, this was before Al died. This was like, he was still around. I was listening to the White Album, and I don't know. I for some reason that song came on. I was like, man, this is about Al. He was a Michigan farm boy, and he went like all the way to the moon. He was Mother Nature's son. There was just something about me that reminded me of him, and to hear that at the end of the memorial I was like, I just started, oh my gosh, I was pretty emotional. So I felt that was perfect. So yes, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, good job to everyone involved in that, because it was wonderful.
Hey, congratulations. This is real good.
As we mentioned last week, Challenger, the final flight, was released on Netflix last Wednesday. It's a brand new 4-part documentary about the tragedy, and we've both now had a chance to watch it. So, Emily, what's your verdict on this documentary?
Oh boy, it's I loved it. I thought they did a beautiful job. But all I'm saying is, by the third episode, you might want to pause. If you're a space enthusiast, even if you don't remember this event, if you were born after the event, you may want to just pause and get a drink or something, an adult beverage, just because it is so sad and maddening and ultimately hopeful. It runs kind of the gamut of a lot of emotion. So I highly recommend it, but just know when you get into it, you're probably going to feel a lot of different things in it.
There's been so many sensationalist documentaries over time about this. So to see this, again, that was the fear with this, that this would be another like that, but it wasn't. And it was great having the family members involved. Although I didn't learn anything new, I don't think. If now anyone asks me about it, I will happily send them the way of this, with a caveat that episodes 3 and 4 are just heartbreaking.
Yes.
And you're going to get upset if you have a heart. It's done really well, and I've had people contact me, because obviously these things flash up on Netflix, and I've had people contact me who don't really know anything about space but watched it, and they've all said how amazing they think it is. Dick Scobie's wife is an absolute saint on
yes,
it.
She's incredible.
She's definitely the star. She's got so much grace, and I thoroughly enjoyed every time she was on the screen. I feel like the whole thing is a study in guilt. If you're watching it just in terms of a human connection thing, and not necessarily with the space flight mindset on, or enthusiast mindset on, it's a pure exercise in guilt and the people they've got on. For example, I forget the guy's name, but the child actor at the time who was at the launch, and they had him on.
I forgot his name. He was Ralphie in A Christmas Story.
Yeah, exactly. So he was on it, and he was at the launch, and so he was just someone there who was watching. And yes, he'd met Krista, but seeing his guilt just from being there watching. And then obviously seeing the guilt of fellow astronauts and the people that built the rocket, and it's fascinating. Just you see how it's affected different people in different ways. And some people you're like, yes, that's the response I wanted from you, and other people you're just maddened with for how they don't seem to have accepted any responsibility that they may have, and the way they had these people look into the camera and say it was just. I nearly threw my phone, which I was watching it across the room. I was that angry. It's just a very well done documentary, and as much as you can enjoy something like that, I did enjoy it.
I felt the main focus on the documentary wasn't really on the disaster as much as like the astronauts and their families, which I thought was great, because not every Challenger related show or documentary has been like that. A lot of them keep focusing on the moment of disaster, which
this didn't do.
Yeah, this didn't really do it. I mean, obviously, for those who haven't watched the show, it does show what happened. It more or less talks about, you know, the actual victims, the people who died, who they were, you know, what their families were like, you know, and we get to meet their families. And for me, that was very moving. You know, since this whole adventure and, you know, space flight, history has started, I've been very lucky to befriend some of the astronaut families, you know, and it's just, I can't imagine. I mean, I try to I look at them and I'm like, I don't know what it must have been like to, you know, that, oh yeah, that's my dad up there, you know, yeah, that's my, you know, whatever, I just can't imagine. What if that, oh my God, like, you know, you try to put yourself into that situation, like, what if that was somebody I loved or that I cared about, you know, my friend. What you said about the lack of guilt, that I don't want to be negative because ultimately I don't think it was a negative miniseries whatsoever. I think it did end on an episode of hope and optimism. I'll be real. I was very shocked by the lack of contrition some people had. Yeah. I was like, so you're sitting here telling this to the camera in a documentary with the family members in it? Yeah. Like, for real, like, be a professional. Like, I think I was taking, I don't know why I'm admitting this. I had a few drinks by the 4th episode and I was writing notes in a notepad. And one of my notes was so mean. And I think it actually said, it didn't have a cuss word in it, but I think it said, you know, sociopaths or something else, like something like that. Because that's how I felt. It was like there was no
remorse.
There was no remorse. Just, oh yeah, I would have done it the same way. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I've been in a few limited, you know, leadership positions in my life, and it's just like, you screw up. You know, my thing is just be transparent. Tell people, okay, this is exactly what I did, and this is how I messed up. Yeah. You know, and I accept responsibility for this, and this is how, you know, there was none of that. I felt incredibly sad, not just for the astronauts who died and their families, but I felt very sad for the people who worked at NASA at the time because that was the culture. Yeah. You know? I mean, if you're in a culture where you have to, Sally Redd had to pass like a note, like, you know, clandestinely to somebody during the Rogers Commission stuff, you know, if you have to do that and worry about losing your job, that's crazy to me.
Yeah. My one criticism is they perhaps could have explored that a little bit more, particularly in regards to the astronaut office. They seem to just ignore that side of it a little bit and how, I mean, although they did talk to a couple of other astronauts, I feel like they didn't delve into what was the culture like. Did you have fears? They kind of did, but not really. Were you relaying your fears about the shuttle, which they had, to people? Could you? Were you allowed to? What happened if you did express things? And you know, this is, I'm sure you've read Mike Milan's book. He covers that really well. So if people have watched the documentary and want to know more about that side of it, I'd recommend Riding Rockets. Because that does go into that side of it, and I feel it's an important part. And as you say, there's that culture of having that openness and being able to speak up and speak out when something doesn't look right, and not fearing your job. And weirdly today, I saw someone ask, his name escapes me, the president of United Launch Alliance,
Tory Bruno.
Yes, someone asked Tory Bruno on Twitter today what he learnt most from the Challenger accident, and he was saying that it's how important it is to have a culture that is open. That's the biggest thing he took away, having that speak out culture within the ethos of what you're doing, especially when you're doing something as dangerous as spaceflight, and that's got to be the lesson learned, really. And yeah, so good documentary.
I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's not a happy watch all the time, but I did enjoy it, and I do recommend it. Yeah. So,
we were both nervous about it. So for us to both be that way, I think that says a lot.
Absolutely.
Today, up here where the blue sky turns to black, we can say at long last to Dick, Mike, Judy, to Ron and Elle, and to Krista and Greg. Dear friends, we have resumed the journey that we promised to continue for you. Dear friends, your loss has meant that we could confidently begin anew. Dear friends, your spirit and your dream are still alive in our hearts.
with that new documentary coming out, it feels appropriate to talk about our favourite documentaries. Now, I did put something on Twitter about this and asked people for their thoughts on what their favourite documentaries were. And I was surprised. About 5 people all responded saying the Challenger documentary was now one of their favourites, which again shows how powerful that was. But over the course of the year, there's been loads. I've got some VHSs up there from 25 years ago, which I probably need to rewatch. But my memory of them is they're all quite static and stale, even though I love them. But recently, documentaries have really come alive. The cleaned up footage and the production standards that people have brought to documentaries recently, they're now not just talking heads. And I think because the 50th anniversary of Apollo, we've had a lot more as well, and people are starting to think out the box. So do you have a favorite, Emily?
Oh, gosh. That's kind of like asking me what my favorite kid is. I don't have kids, but if I did, there's actually 4 of them. I'm embarrassed to say this because that's a lot. There's actually 4 that I really enjoy. One of them I think is from the Discovery Channel, and it's called When We Left Earth.
Okay.
The NASA missions, and it really goes from the beginnings of a human spaceflight to a shuttle. So I really enjoyed that one. It kind of has talking heads, but if you're kind of a newbie at space history, I feel it's a really good overview. And they include Skylab, which is really nice. Because
it often gets ignored.
Yes. A lot of these, TV programs, it's like, and Skylab happened next, and you're like, really, like, come on, The next one I really liked was Last Man on the Moon. Mm-hmm. Just because I thought, for me, it was such a moving portrait of a lion in winter, kind of coming to terms with his past and, kind of maturing into the elder statesman of spaceflight. I really loved it. I just felt it was, oh God, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. I really miss Gene Cernan. He was really awesome. And he was just such a tireless, almost to the end, just like Al Warden, just a tireless promoter of spaceflight. And I just think that's such a moving portrait of him, and oh boy, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Next, I'm trying to change the subject. Next is Mission Control. I believe it's by the same people who did Last Man on the Moon, and I loved it. It really gives a lot of credence to the people who worked in the trench, because really until the book Go Flight came out, and there's also a podcast, there was a podcast at least called that. There'd been some books by Gene Kranz and Chris Kraft and all that. So there had been a couple books, but Go Flight was really a great overview of the whole it really explained it from its origins, which I thought was it was a book that needed to be written. Mm-hmm. And when the documentary came out, I just loved it. It was so neat to see those guys in action, see them finally get their moment. Yeah. And the last one, I'm kind of biased because I'm the technical advisor for it, is Searching for Skylab. Yes, I actually helped with that one, so I'm I have to say I'm probably a little biased, and I probably have a conflict of interest saying this, but I do have to say I really loved it just because Skylab is just never discussed. And as I think everybody knows this, I'm a Skylab freak. So I seeing all the archival footage that I'd never really seen before. Dwight Stephen, I'm saying his name wrong. I'm sorry, Dwight. Dwight Stephen Benecki did just the most incredible job on it. I just loved it. And shout out, I'm in the mutiny part of the film, or the anti-mutiny part of the film. So just so you know, amazing. I am in there.
I actually ordered that this week because so I'm going to be, hopefully that will be delivered soon, so I can finally watch that.
Yes.
So yeah. Oh, we're not too far away. I've not seen When We Left the Earth. I will try and track that one down. and the Searching for Skylab. A few people did mention that one, so I went on and found the Kickstarter link and managed to find the shop, and there's still some copies left, so I managed to get myself one. But yeah, for me, the Mission Control film is beautiful. It's the same company. You're right. It's the same company as Last Man on the Moon. They also made one called Armstrong that came out last year. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes, I did see it. I enjoyed it.
What all three of those have in common is that high production standards have cleaned up the stuff really well. The soundtrack is just really moving on all of them. They use really clever music that just helps to bring the emotional side of it out. And within the Mission Control, it's the music they use is just wonderful. But the scene where they all walk back into the control room and they're really old and they're sitting there and then they all get their moment to turn to the camera. And I know it's not all the ones that are left alive, but the ones they chose to focus on in the movie. I got emotional just seeing these old boys sitting there. And yes, it is all boys, but I also like the fact that they focused it on the new people as well and how the new people look back at the old people. And when you see the change in the new people, that it's not all men anymore, and that the culture has changed within that. It's a lot more diverse culture within Mission Control now, and that's great to see. But yeah, Bill Moon in it is just wonderful, and they're all wonderful. It's such a great documentary.
Bill Moon is amazing. He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, and I got to meet him last year in Houston, and he was just delightful. I think he was impressed that someone recognized him, but I think that was what's great about for those guys, that they now they've become stars within the world, really, haven't they? That events, you wouldn't walk past them anymore, whereas you may have done 5 years ago, unless you really knew who you were looking for. So it's great that they've been given that opportunity. And The Last Man on the Moon, I don't think it's been rivaled. I really don't think it's been rivaled for a documentary.
Oh boy.
Again,
I gotta watch it again now.
From that opening scene where he's sitting at a bullfighting, bull riding, a rodeo, as you call it.
Yeah.
And he's just a man in the crowd, and he's watching, old man in the crowd, watching, pulling the faces, and then they cut it in with footage of him doing his training at NASA. And then back to him and him being on the moon, and he's there, and no one around is aware that he's the last person to currently walk on the moon. And that juxtaposition, it's wonderful, and I just find him inspiring. There was a special edition Blu-ray set that got released last year with some deleted scenes and extra scenes, and there's a scene in it called Ad Astra, which absolutely broke me. If you've got that, then I don't even
just the regular version broke me because it was just, oh my God, I hate to say this because I know Gene was kind of a proud man, I don't mean proud like full of himself, but he was handsome, and he liked to look a certain way and stuff, and the scene where he's with his old his buddy I think his Navy buddy or something, and he's trying to get on the horse, and he's kind of struggling, because he's older and he's got some physical issues. That part really was like, oh my gosh, they're mortal, just like we are, and my God, I'm about to start crying. It was just, I think they put that, because at first I was like, why did they put that in? Just to make me cry? And then I was like, I think the filmmakers were trying to say, we all get older, and time waits for nobody, and I was just like, wow, it's just something about that just really moved me. Like, he's a person too, just like the rest of us. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it so much I wrote a song about it. So yeah, I mean, to me, it was a real defining moment watching that for the first time. And the day he died, I remember going down to the Science Museum in London, where we've got the Apollo 10 capsule, which he was in, and having a little vigil there, and then coming home and putting that on, and being really frustrated because this was crazy. So he died. I go to the Science Museum. It's the only Apollo command module which isn't in America. So it's amazing it's in London, right? I'm very lucky that it's just down the road from me. And they hadn't put anything up. They hadn't even printed out anything to say, oh, one of the guys that flew this died this morning, which I thought was just like poor form, really, really poor form.
Yeah.
And I was really angry about it because I felt that's as much as he means a lot to me, I just felt it's a way of inspiring people. If you can put a human, it's just a tin can, right? The command modules, if you don't know what they are, they're a little bit weird to see. So if you were to put something up that day saying one of the guys who flew in this 50 years ago died today, that could have made someone stop for a moment and go, what is this?
Yeah.
Where did this go?
Who was in there?
And who were these people? And it's the human face to science, which and exploration, which when you've just got a room full of tin cans, I think that's important. And a group of school kids went past at that precise moment. I'm having this thought, and they're with their teacher, and one of them says, "Miss, what's that?" And the teacher says this: "It's just some spaceship."
Oh boy!
I nearly lost it. I nearly lost it. I was like,
what?
You've completely neglected your duty as a teacher in that moment right there. Number one, it's not just some spaceship. It's the thing that's gone faster, carried humans faster than anyone has ever been traveled before.
Yes.
There's so many things about that particular spaceship. It's the second moon mission and the dress rehearsal for Apollo. There's so much more to it than that. And one of the guys died. And so then I came home and watched a documentary and was just sitting there crying. And that was the point. I was like, I need to write a song. So I did. So that documentary, I just think it's amazing. And if you haven't seen it, you have to see it. It's just done so well. The other one, the Armstrong movie that they did last year, the same company did last year, is good. I do like it. It's a similar kind of vibe. But unfortunately, because he's not around to tell the story, it's a lot of other family members, and that's great. There's one great scene with Christopher Kraft where they talk about who made the decision to walk first,
yes,
Buzz or Neil.
I think I remember
and
this.
It's amazing. It's worth watching for that one scene where he's just great. He was great value in all these documentaries, always has been, because he just says it how he sees it. But he was on fine form in that documentary.
Yes. Wow, I do remember that, and I was like, I think my mouth was open. I was like, okay,
yeah,
all right then. There you have it.
So I want to do some honorable mentions. I mean, that is my favorite. So I want to do some honorable mentions. One, because a few people have pointed these out, and two, I think they're good. Mercury 13 is stunning documentary.
Yes. Yes.
If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. This is about the women who applied to be astronauts at the same time that the Mercury program was going on, and they were declined, and their story and the fact they went through all the testing and were essentially told they could do it, but it didn't happen. And it's ridiculously powerful, and seeing what happened with them later on in their lives and what they ended up doing. I mean, I didn't know about these people before I watched this documentary. I think I'd heard of one of them, but it's amazing. Yeah.
They went through. I think they went through a lot of the same. I want to say a majority of the same testing that the astronauts went through at the Lovelace Lovelace clinic, and but I think they were going to do kind of like a second study, and for some reason it got with NASA and it got canceled. And so that's kind of where the movie starts. Like, okay, why can't we have women in space? So it is I agree, it is excellent. It's a little frustrating if you're watching it and you're a woman. You're kind of like,
I can't imagine.
You're like, really?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just, and that's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to ruin it too much, but it does have a happy ending, because we do see women in space eventually. It just took a really long time, but it's kind of amazing to me how in the United States, everybody thinks, it's so progressive. And in the 60s, it really was not.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is kind of an eye-opener. So I would definitely see it.
Yeah, I think it's really wonderful. There's one on Amazon at the moment, Amazon Prime. It's also on YouTube, I think. It's called The Apollo Experience, and it's about Apollo 17. And it looks like they intended on doing every single mission, but the only one that seems to be online is Apollo 17. And essentially, they've just used all the raw footage from the mission, and they've got some interviews from the time. It's kind of like the Apollo 11 film that we spoke about for so long last week, but not as cleaned up. And it's it's actually really good.
I need to check that one out.
It shows a bit more of what they did on the moon and the science, but it has some great visuals in it as well. So that's if you watch Last Man on the Moon and you want to know more about that particular mission, it's worth it. And Ron Evans is just wonderful. I just think he was wonderful. Anyway, one other honorable mention from me is In the Shadow of the Moon. I really enjoyed that.
Yes! Oh my God, I love that one.
That one to me is a really, really good one. It's because it's just the astronauts who went to the moon, who were still alive at the time, talking about it, and I think that's a really good one. A lot of people have said Chasing the Moon, which I think was out last year, and I haven't seen that one, so I've ordered that one as well.
I actually enjoyed it a lot. I actually like Chasing the Moon. I watched it. I felt it was excellent. Basically, it talks about the Apollo program, and it kind of juxtaposes it against, the social problems in the United States around that time. And there's a book also that accompanies it by Robert Stone, who made the film. And I'm probably ruining his name. Alan, I'm so sorry. Alan Andres. Andres. If he's listening, I'm so sorry. I really enjoyed it because if you weren't around during that time, I was not. It really illuminates, what that era was like, and what, the kind of, push-pull between, the hippies and, just all the stuff kind of going on in the era that, politically, socially, and then Apollo just kind of happens on top of all that. So it's really good. I enjoyed it. Yeah,
that's the kind of thing I think I'm going to enjoy. So I've ordered it, so I'm looking forward to that one. But yeah, there are loads, and then anyone else, if we have missed them out, please do send your reviews. We would love to hear you. But I think for me, definitely Last Man on the Moon is just outstanding. And if you were going to pick one to watch this week, I would definitely hunt that one out, and followed by Mission Control.
Yes, I do agree. I think those are both really fine documentaries. Last Man on the Moon, oh gosh. Like, I can't even think about it without getting, emotional, just because it was just so beautifully done.
Yep. 100%. Oh, I'm glad we agree on that. I'm glad.
Yes!
That's beautiful. This has got to be one of the most proud moments of my life, I guarantee you.
So that's all we have time for this week. Looks like we've got an exciting week coming up. There's a few launches scheduled, including the Delta IV Heavy, the NROL 44 launch. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Is it NROL, NROL? I don't know how they say it, but anyway, that's been scheduled for this weekend. Also, there's going to be a Blue Origins launch this weekend, if the weather holds out for both of those. And no doubt, I'm sure a Starlink launch will happen if other launches are going on. So that's it for now. So again, thanks to everyone who got in contact to share their favourite documentaries, and I have, as I said, ordered a few already, so I will look forward to watching them and others. So please do get in touch, because I'm a real sucker for a documentary.
And thanks to all of those who have been leaving reviews on your favorite podcast platforms. It's really been helpful for us, so please give us a rating if you get some time.
Massive thank you for that, and an extra special thanks to those who have got involved on our Patreon page, patreon.com/space and things. There are a load of extra bonuses, including finding out who our next guests are and being able to submit your questions to them. And you can get a cartoon version of yourself in a flight jacket like Emily and I have as our avatars.
Yes, you can get a cute avatar.
Yeah.
But mostly we'd like to thank you for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed this episode. And we hope to see you next week for episode 5 of Space and Things.
And remember, in space, no one can hear you meme.
Space and Things has been brought to you by And Things Productions.